Can you hear him? Good evening, everyone. My name is Shingai Ngara. I'm a second generation Zimbabwean Jesuit educated individual, along with my two siblings. Being the perfect middle child, I went to both St. Ignatius College and St. George's College. That bridge that we want to articulate then gives us the grounding that explains what we are looking to achieve here today. We're asking the question, profit or piety? A false dichotomy. Can entrepreneurs conduct their business led by their faith? We have a panel of 3 speakers who are captains of industry in Zimbabwe, in which we would like to talk about the real world dynamics of doing business in Zimbabwe as a prototype, potentially, of doing business in Africa, and some idea around doing business anywhere in the world. Can entrepreneurs be driven by their faith as they conduct their business? What is important to also achieve in the time that we are together is to understand what success looks like and what success doesn't look like. So what success today does not look like is if we talk in what I would call high-minded Christianese, in which we are all trying to pass ourselves off as better Christians. That will not be success. Success today will look like having a discussion about the real difficult decisions in the marketplace that business people face, how they wrestle between questions of faith, questions of ethics, questions of morals, to arrive at real world decisions in the world of business. If we have that discussion, and I think that will be a nice objective scoreboard for all of us to assess ourselves at the end of this session. So to kick us off, I would like to ask, as Jesuit educated boys do, the lady to go first. Our first panelist to give us, just for up to 5 minutes, her view about dynamics of doing business in Zimbabwe and in Africa is the MD of Traverse Travel, a travel business, Ms. Zodwa Mkandla. Zodwa, over to you.
Thank you so much, Shingai. Good evening, everyone. and my fellow panelists. My name is Zodwa Mkandla, like you said. I'm the founder of Travel in Harare. We're leading travel agents doing both leisure and corporate. Doing business in Zimbabwe hasn't been the easiest, but you have to know what you want, you have to know what you're doing, and focus on what you are trying to achieve. I'm going to talk about the industry that I'm in, which is travel. It's a foreign-based industry. We deal with international airlines. It's been very difficult because most of the airlines have stopped traveling to Zimbabwe, which makes it very difficult for Zimbabweans to be able to move from point A to point B on direct flights. We have to go via either South Africa or via Dubai or via different other places. The mode of payments is the most difficult thing that most of the travelers that we deal with have. It's very difficult to get real money. Like we don't accept RTGS, which are Zimbabwean local money. We only deal with the US dollars. That's what our business deals with. So you find that most of the clients, they won't be able to have the money readily available. Our business is a cash business. If you don't have cash, you can't travel, which makes it very difficult for most of the people that were used before, that they could get a ticket now and pay later, which is a fly now, pay later scheme. We no longer offer that anymore because it's become so difficult, because most of the clients that we deal with, even if we offer them credit facilities, they don't pay on time as they will have promised. So we've resorted to paying cash. It's either you bring your cash up front, otherwise you cannot fly. So it becomes so difficult for some of the clients. You find that even our volumes that we used to get before, where we used to sell maybe between 100 and 150 tickets a month, it's gone down to selling maybe 50 tickets. So it's become very difficult for us, but we would rather do that than sell tickets to clients that are not going to be able to pay us. So it's quite, it's not an easy, it wasn't an easy decision to make, but it is what it is in Zimbabwe. We have to do that. Otherwise, we will not be able to survive in business.
Yes. Thank you very much, Zodwa. Thank you very much, Zodwa. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Maxen Karombo. He is a chartered marketer who has experience in multiple industries.
Oh, sorry. Okay, thank you, Shingai. I also would like to present to our audience the macro environmental factors that we face in doing business in Zimbabwe. I think like just in any other country in the world, Zimbabwe is fraught with both risks and opportunities. We, like any country, have been impacted upon by COVID-19. We exhibit all the characteristics of an emerging economy. And I think our country, economically, has been impacted by historical imbalances, which have led to a skewed access to resources, to education, to health. So that is the country that we operate in as a business. I just want to pick up a few risks and opportunities that we find ourselves faced with in business. So the first risk that Zimbabwe faces is really one of currency instability, as we've heard from Zodwa here. We need our currency to transition from being a unit of measurement, yes, but from being a transactional mode currency to a store of value. And I think that with the advent of the Forex auction system, we're getting to that stability where confidence in the currency is now building up. We've had high levels of inflation. I heard somewhere being commented on that Zimbabwe is probably the second highest inflation rate in the world after Argentina. So if you look at 2020, we had an inflation rate of around 622%, though 2021 is promising to come down given the stability that we faced with the exchange rates. We also, being an emerging economy, face pressure for skills. Young people looking for, better alternatives somewhere else tend to quickly migrate. But also, if you look at a risk environment, I think that we battle with various policy shifts in the marketplace. But I guess many an African country would face similar challenges. In terms of opportunities, I think that's where the exciting bit comes in. Zimbabwe, like an emerging economy, has got a growing population. And that is accompanied by various demographic shifts, particularly between urban and rural, and what that opportunity brings to us. So if you just take a drive down any of our major highways out of Harare or out of Loyola, you'll see that formerly small settlements are just springing up and growing into urbanized settlements. And that presents an opportunity in itself. Agriculture, you actually don't need to be a farmer to be a participant in the agriculture value chain. But with the growing agriculture output, there's a lot that our young people can participate in and be competent business people themselves. Mining, just like agriculture, you don't have to be a miner. You can be a supplier of various services and products in there. Technology, we're getting fintechs coming from left, right, and center, and all spurred by COVID-19 in some cases. We're having to work from home. We're having to shop online. All that is presenting opportunities that were never there before. I talked about construction in the residential and commercial suburbs that are coming through, commercial centers that are coming through, even here in Harare and everywhere else. Education itself, with the privatization that is going through, provides a source for diversification of income streams and for new participants in there. And I think that just offering convenience to people in itself presents an opportunity for doing business. So Zimbabwe is a country that is quite dynamic and interesting in that it has its risks, but it's got also a well-balanced portfolio of opportunities that we can go through. I think the question that we face today is, are we, as business people, able to live our faith and able to live in the economy that presents us? And I think that I firmly believe that you can be pious and be profitable at the same time. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Max, for that robust assessment. And having put your stake in the ground, that's very good to begin the debate. I would now like to hand over to Edmond Mupfapairi. Edmond is a stockbroker who has been in multiple firms in the industry and is now a business owner in his own right with his own stockbroking firm. Edmond, over to you.
Thank you, Shingai. So I'm Edmond Mupfapairi, the current president of the Christian Life Community in Zimbabwe, which is an international lay association of Christians who follow the nation spirituality. For those who went to mission schools in Zimbabwe, You remember CLC or CLG in the mission schools. Like you, Shingai, I do have an ignition grounding. On the professional side, I come from a financial services background, a stockbroker by profession. I'm a founding member of Activos Capital, which is the leading investment banking boutique in Zimbabwe with interest in securities trading, investment management, and corporate finance advisory. All our businesses are licensed by the Securities and Exchange Commission of Zimbabwe. Profits versus piety. And we would like to find out if it is possible to pursue business, pursue profits, and at the same time uphold our religious beliefs and values. I think they are not mutually.
Sorry, Edmond. I have to cut you short. Can the technical guys please assist with Edmond's sound? He's very difficult to hear, and I'm sorry, Edmond, you're gonna have to start over. Could you just make sure that his sound is actually sorted out? Okay, so while that is being sorted out, I think let's just quickly recap, because I think there's been a very healthy overview that has been given from the two speakers who have spoken thus far. I think the first consideration is if you have a business that is driven by local currency, then you face the dynamics of how to deal with the currency holding value while you are transacting. And then if you have a business that deals with the external market, tourism, exporting minerals, then you want to be conducting your affairs with as much exposure to foreign currency as you possibly can. And then I think what was very interesting in respect of what Max articulated is that Max articulated that while there are risks in respect of contemporary Zimbabwe and the business environment, and a 622% inflation is quite a number. Notwithstanding that, and perhaps some challenges around policy consistency, there are opportunities that are presented from an entrepreneurial spirit, in which people are taking small settlements and urbanizing them. There are opportunities in the agricultural value chain, technology, and spurred on by the COVID reality that we find ourselves in, is also creating an opportunity for business to be redefined, and opportunities in education. And so he took a firm view in respect of the debate that we are going to be having, that it is possible to be pious and profitable. Can I just check with the team? Is Edmond ready to go?
Hello? Okay. Thanks, Shingai. I will reintroduce myself. I am Edmond Mupfapairi. I am the current president of the Christian community in Zimbabwe, an Ignatian lay movement. I, like yourself, have an Ignatian grounding as well. From the professional perspective, I lead Activos Capital, which is an investment banking outfit with interest in securities trading, investment management, and corporate finance advisory. All the businesses we run are licensed and regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission of Zimbabwe. To the discussion, profits versus piety. Can we really conduct business particularly in Zimbabwe, with a profit motive and still uphold our religious beliefs and values. I think the two are not mutually exclusive. Both can be successfully pursued. And I think faith and finance can peacefully coexist. I'll just begin from a global perspective and to note what we have been witnessing, a growth in what I would term impact investing. So these are investments with the intention to generate positive social and environmental measurable gains, at the same time alongside financial return as well. So we are seeing CEOs that are only not expected to achieve their financial goals, but to earn profits in an ethical and socially responsible manner. Shareholders are looking for corporate leaders to act as good stewards. So even locally, we have seen a lot of companies that engage in CSR activities, supporting communities and the needy. So from this perspective, we are seeing an incorporation of Christian values and teachings into business. But that is the global stage. And of course, the interest is really on the ground in Zimbabwe. How easy is it to conduct business in an ethical manner? I think the narrative has been that Zim is a hard-hit area for businesses. And if you are going to do anything, you have to pay your way through. And we, on the onset, acknowledge that corruption is very endemic, both in the private and civic sectors. And over the years, we've also witnessed a number of corporate scandals and the collapse of businesses for many reasons. I think to a large extent, how an organization or how an individual will be impacted depends largely on what you are doing. I think from a formalized business perspective, there are less hurdles to jump. And once you go through the processes of registration, licensing, and so on, including proper corporate governance and internal controls, being ethical becomes a lot easy. There is no need to engage in bribery and corruption. I think the biggest challenge comes when it comes to the small businesses, the small individuals, in what I would term your kind of hustles, or what in other countries or other jurisdictions is termed entrepreneurship. With a hustle, money needs to be made yesterday. And therefore you find that there are a lot of corners that you need to cut in order to make sure that the things that you're doing actually result in you making money. I guess another perspective has to do with the business environment that we operate in. I think as Max highlighted, we have witnessed a decline and policy shifts that have seen a lot of value being eroded from individuals and corporates. And part of the problems that the previous two speakers have already highlighted involve companies looking for ways in which they can safeguard their balance sheets and ensure that they retain value. And things like sourcing currency on the black market become inevitable for business. The other perspective is to do with human capital. You would understand that over the years, there's been a serious brain drain. A lot of skills have left the country. And therefore, it becomes difficult to find skills that can execute professionally What we have found in the sector that I operate in is that it's easy to be compliant, to follow procedures, because a lot of the individuals and firms claim compliance to international standards, such as the CFA Institute, the CFA Code of Ethics and Standards of Professional Conduct. And I believe that similar organizations, such as the CAs, the marketers, the insurers do have similar self-regulated organizations that allow you to make sure that you comply and you stick by the rules of the game. I think just to quote Pope Francis, who challenges us to ensure that humanity is saved, not by wealth, saved by wealth, but not ruled by it. So I believe that finance and profit can actually coexist with faith. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Edmond. So I think what is then very exciting is that we have got two speakers who have put a stake in the ground that it is possible to reconcile one's faith with the way that one conducts business. And I think Edmond took an interesting view in that, in respect of starting with a more global view around the emergence of ESG, environmental, social, and governance considerations, and how those are now beginning to affect business decisions and investment decisions as well, and the growth of CSR, corporate social responsibility, and how that is also giving businesses an opportunity to be good corporate citizens as well. What we'll want to delve into a little bit in what I thought was an excellent turn of phrase was the notion that the small business, the hustler, the tenderpreneur, money must be made yesterday. And that then creates an urgency, a need to move very quickly to make money for sheer survival purposes. And I think the question that arises there is, does that then put such businesses in a position where being able to think in terms of ESG and CSR is an opportunity that is available to them at all? The point that was made around, if you are compliant, then you are able to then avoid the potential for needing to engage in bribery, I think is a very encouraging point around the business landscape in Zimbabwe. What I'd like to just advise everybody listening in, whether people are on Zoom or are on YouTube, on Facebook, or any other medium, questions and comments into the chat session. We will be incorporating them into the discussion. If you have a question which is targeted at a particular speaker, please outline which speaker that is that you would like to address your question. If it is a general question, please do so as well. I thought what I would want to do now is I would want to take a step back on this question of faith and business. Specifically, the panel is at St. George's College, a Jesuit school. I am wearing a tie, an old boy's tie, of St. Ignatius College, a Jesuit school. Let's talk about the Jesuits just for a little bit to get back to the discussion. There's a book on my table here. Heroic Leadership by Chris Lowney. Chris Lowney trained as a Jesuit for the 9 years that it takes. It's a real commitment. And then at the death thought that it wasn't quite for him, and he went into investment banking. And to his surprise, he found that the principles that he learned, training as a Jesuit scholastic, helped him to become a very successful investment banker with a top-tier firm. The question there that arises is, what is in the Jesuit medicine, let me call it, that enables relevance in a world that is not church-based? And so I have other books on my table as well. There's a book here by John Mackey and Raj Sisodia, which asks about conscious capitalism, liberating the heroic spirit of business. So not only can business, as a question, not only is it a question of business being ethical, but can business actually be heroic in trying to achieve social outcomes? I have another book, Learning to Lead for the Kingdom by Emmanuel Ngara. That's actually my dad. And here, the question that is asked there is it possible to reconcile our notion of free will with God's sovereignty so that we are able to conduct ourselves in such a manner in business and in life in general that contributes to the building of the kingdom? Yet another book, The Fortune at the Bottom of the Pyramid by C.K. Prahalad, which basically says, and this alludes to some of what Max was driving at, that while business in its conventional sense looks to say, we want to target the pockets of wealth and value, wealthy customers who we can provide products and services to in order to gain an investment grade return. Professor Prahalad articulates that if business reconfigures itself to be high volume at the bottom of the pyramid, pursuing low margins but over many people, you are then able to make an investment grade return as well. And this becomes important from a grounding of the discussion point of view, where I want to potentially challenge the CSR view is, should business only be looking to do social responsibility as an adjunct to itself? So we're in the main business of mining, for example, and then CSR is an adjunct? Or a question to the panel, can we be looking at our business driving social value in how our business is actually conducted? Edmond, could I start with you to respond to that question?
Thanks, Shingai. I think the trend, like I highlighted in the beginning, is that it's actually part of the goals of a corporate now. That is the trend, that is the modern trend, to be able to achieve impact in the communities that they serve. So they're not only looking to, it's not only incidental, but actually it's part of the goals. So as you plan your business, you are planning about how you are going to impact. Investors right now are looking for projects that have a deliverable deliberate social impact. So it's not just incidental to, after making, it's not an afterthought, after making profits, then we can perhaps do 1, 2, or 3. But this is part of the goals of the business to actually achieve a social impact in the areas that they operate, in the environments that they operate. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Edmond. Max, can I potentially ask you this question? Consider a business like retail. Is it in a retailer's purview to ask the question, what were the labor practices that got this can of beans that I'm selling on my shelf? Is it within the retailer's purview to be bothered by that? Or is the retailer only looking for the lowest cost, that the retailer can get the product onto their shelf?
Thanks, Shingai. Let me just start by putting on the ground a very strong principle that I live with, that you can actually do well by doing good. In other words, you can be profitable by doing good in society and living a pious life. So if you are a retailer and various suppliers are coming to you for you to stock their products, it is in your best interest to ensure that the products that you are stocking are manufactured in a sustainable way. And sustainability extends beyond just labor practices. In a business that I am currently involved in, we've got what we call SGP, supplier guiding principles. In other words, we want to ensure that those who supply into our value chains behave in a sustainable way. We only have one earth, and we do not inherit it from our parents. We actually inherit it from those who are to come. And we've got a responsibility to give it back and pass it on in a better state than we found it. So those supplier guiding principles go beyond just labor practices. Obviously, you want fair practices there. You want to ensure that the environmental practices are also sustainable. And you want to ensure that you've got a business to run after a customer has picked up that particular can of beans. So yes, Shingai, you can do well by doing good and ensuring that our practices benefit the economy, benefit the community, and ultimately the shareholders and various stakeholders who are invested in the business.
Thanks very much for that answer, Max, but I'm going to push back a little bit, all right?
Okay.
You're competing. So you're retailer 1, you're competing with retailer 2. Retailer 2 doesn't care. Retailer 2 is interested in shortcuts that drive down the cost of production of the can of beans so that he can sell that can of beans at, for argument's sake, a 20% discount to what you are selling it at. Is the market not going to go for him? And then he's going to push more volume. Will that not then be a more attractive investment case to investors who are seeking yield? Your comment, sir.
I think that they can go ahead and do that. But I bet my bottom dollar it's not sustainable. They'll soon run into problems. I think that as a retailer or any other business, you've got to focus on your unique selling propositions. And our unique selling propositions are derived in how best to satisfy consumer and customer needs. And that is what you should focus on as a business. And soon, rather sooner or later, the customer or consumer will find out where corners have been cut. So stick to the knitting, set the course, walk, don't run, and you'll get there. So I don't believe that those that are cutting corners will be there for the time in the time that we are all looking forward to growing and building sustainable businesses.
Okay, so I think there's an argument that you're making that they may be short run more profitable, but the outlook that you articulated earlier would be long run more profitable.
Yeah.
So Zodwa, I saw you nodding there. So let me test something with you too. You're in the travel business. You will have guys coming from God knows where with a lot of money that could have been made in any which ways, ethical, legal, outright criminal. Does that bother you? Is that something that factors into your accepting a booking? Or is your only frame, hey, this is US dollars coming in. I didn't do anything wrong here. So I'll take whatever business comes my way. Your thoughts, ma'am?
It's something that we have never thought about. When a client comes in, all I'm interested in is giving a service and make sure that we give it to the best of our ability. How they make their money, I don't think it's any of our concern, because if I wasted my time or spend my time trying to find out how the client make their money, I think my business will be investigating their source of income instead of making business for myself. What I worry about is, have they paid for the service that we've given them? Have they given us, if it's a check, is it a genuine check? Is it legit? You know, some clients will come with checks that will bounce back and they're not paid. So it's really not our concern where the money comes from. If it's illegal money, I'm sure the law will take its course eventually. Unfortunately, now in Zimbabwe, most of the money is now, they pay us in cash. So you'll never find a way of tracing where the money came from, because the clients always bring cash to pay. Those that are bringing credit cards, of course, those who do checks, we are concerned about who owns a credit card, where it's coming from and all that. We would never give a service to someone with a credit card which is not their own. So that way we are safeguarding ourselves and we are protecting where the source of the money is coming from. So in short, really how they make their money is really none of our business, but have they paid for the service that we've delivered? Have we also given a service to the best of our ability as a service provider? That is what concerns us as a business. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic answer. Edmond, I'm going to ask you as an investor a variation of that question. And I completely get what Zodwa said, right? I mean, she doesn't want to be setting up her own personal FBI for every client that wants to come and do business with her. But I met another business somewhere in this region that I thought was a really interesting business, because this business was in real estate. And this business was dealing strictly in cash for real estate, no mortgages, doing $2 million and $3 million houses in Southern Africa. So I asked this business owner, I said, now let's think about this. Even in London and New York, $2 million or $3 million for a property is pretty significant. Isn't it likely that in Southern Africa, somebody having that sum of money is washing their money through real estate? How do you reconcile in a situation where you as an investor are ESG minded and are CSR minded, that potentially this money could have come from, I don't know, smuggling minerals out of the country? Because there are very few people in the world who have got $2 million in a bag. And that's exactly how this business operated. What would be your comment on that, Edmond?
Okay. So from my perspective, we invest on behalf of clients and we invest in formal businesses. So one of the things that comes with that is we are signatories to anti-money laundering laws, combating of financial crime and financing of terrorism. So normally the money that comes to us is already clean money. It's coming through formal banking channels. We will not take investments where businesses are dealing essentially in cash. It would be irresponsible for me as a fund manager, as a stockbroker, to be handling that kind of business. So we operate highly regulated businesses, which is why in my presentation I made mention of what exactly do you do. If you are operating a formal, regulated, licensed business, then the controls are a lot more stringent and you are less vulnerable to the kind of money that is illicit. I think that's what I would say for now.
Fantastic answer, right? So a key lever here, which is very important, right, is regulation. So we've got the anti-money laundering environment, know your customer, check for the source of value to make sure that that source of value is something which in the value chain is then responsibly made. One of the questions that has come up in the chat from somebody that I was at school with actually, Godwin asks, question for all. For success to be realized, there should be an exploitation of something. Resources, be they opportunities, people, land, or any other factor of production. How do you reconcile exploitation? And before you answer, maybe let me give a specific example of that. I watched two documentaries that I literally stumbled upon back to back. One on Netflix, the bitter chocolate episode of the docu-series called Rotten. And then another one on France 24 about some chocolatiers in Paris. And what was so interesting for me was the different worldviews in the chocolate value chain that these two documentaries looked at. Rotten and bitter chocolate was there on the ground in West Africa, child labor, exploitation to get the cocoa beads. When they're on a truck going to a port, guys might be hijacked, and it's a very, very rough business to get to the cocoa that ultimately goes into the chocolate making process. And what was so fascinating about the France 24 chocolatiers in Paris, there was no consideration about where this all came from. All that they knew was, I've got chocolate, I'm trying to make it look as attractive as possible for my key clientele. But at the heart of this value chain was exploitation in West Africa. So just giving a tangible example to Godwin's question, is exploitation not part of the fabric of how capitalism works? And how can we ensure that we can protect against it? I don't know, Max, is that a hospital pass to you? Would you like to maybe take a shot at it?
Thanks, Shingai. I think that we've got to separate between ethical conduct and unethical conduct. And I would like to believe that there is a lot of, in our audience, a lot of youth and upcoming business people or aspiring business people. And we've got to draw the lines so that people grow up with the right culture. If any business transaction requires that you conduct yourself in any unethical solicitation of anything, I don't think that it is worth your while. It's not sustainable, if I may go back to that. and be guided by Christian principles. So if your will crosses with God's will, let God's will be done. So if anything communicates to you that this is wrong, then it mustn't be done. However, there are instances where businesses can still take advantage of an opportunity in a good way. Let me give you an example. I worked for, I've had the fortune and blessing of working for very good businesses that have helped shape my character. I've worked for Delta Corporation, and I've worked for Unilever, I've worked for Caltex, and locally for Zimbabwe. And in all that, I learned quite a lot of principles that guide my professional conduct. And I'd like to use a Unilever example in India, when I was working there. And there was a problem in one of the provinces in India, or states in India. I can't quite remember which one in particular. But they realized that child mortality below the age of 5 was very high. And a family will have a child and ended up having to have a lot more children because the chances of survival were very slim for children. And all Unilever did with their brand called Lifeboy was to understand that communicable diseases were the center of that. And Unilever is not a medical company. So they went on to something, the habit that we're now using today, of washing hands and teaching hygiene and using their product as a means to achieving that sanitation. And the rate of mortality on children below 5 years old was eliminated. Now, that is doing well in doing business. And I firmly believe in that. There are instances where corporations conduct themselves in an unethical way. So the chocolate value chain that you talk about, there's also coffee. So on average, you go into a coffee shop, you're probably paying anything between $2 to $2.50 for a cup of coffee. But if you ask, how much has the farmer been paid for that? It's probably less than 10 US cents in that. And that problem has been presented to the coffee value chain. And everyone is now awakened to it. Thankfully, the world is a lot more interconnected today. I mean, look at Black Lives Matter movement. Millennials will not let you off the hook if you put profit ahead of doing business well. So I still think that the level of consciousness in society today has changed dramatically to that period where people use the word exploitation rather than collaboration in business. I hope I've answered you, Shingai.
That's actually fantastic. So there are two very important points that Max brought up there, which I would really like them to be grounded in this conversation, right? So in the Unilever India example was a brand of soap as a product that they were selling as a product, but with a bigger sense than just sense in the selling of that product, but also looking to the eradication of communicable disease. And that is really goes to the heart of, I don't know whether the right word in my own head is skepticism, but there is a concern that I have around CSR, because CSR can be a Band-Aid, it can be branding, we look good, let's cut some ribbon, look at the school we just opened. It's a very different consideration when it's at the core of the strategy. We're doing well and we're doing good. So I want to anchor that point in this conversation. Thank you for that, Max. And then I want to anchor the next point, which is a really exciting point, I think, just where the world is at the moment. We have vibrant, energetic young people in the world at the moment, finding a voice about the issues that affect them today and their future. And we have the tools, the phones, for those voices to be amplified. Is that an opportunity for a renewed consumer/citizen activism that can hold business accountable to ethical standards? That we can find out about the farmer earning 10 cents when the latte at Starbucks cost R2.50. And what is the appropriate distribution of value in that value chain? And the opportunity for a consumer activism, technology-driven, that can really put a mirror up to business, so that if business is doing Band-Aids with CSR, our consumer activism can be the conscience that ensures that business is correctly contributing to society. Zodwa, would you have any thoughts on that? Is consumer activism something that we should be thinking about?
Yeah, I think it's something that we should be thinking about, Shingai, because for any business to be successful, it's about the consumers. So when we are dealing with the public, with the consumers who are our clients, we should consider them, how they feel. Like what Max had said about when they're giving a product, for example. I like what he had said about when you compare two different companies, one giving suppose, let's take, for example, an iPhone, one giving an iPhone that is made by Apple, and then one will bring an iPhone that is made by, maybe from China, for example, maybe not a genuine Apple phone. And then someone will say, okay, fine, I've got this Apple phone, I'm selling it for $1,000. Someone brings an Apple phone for $500. Which one would you buy? I would definitely go for the $1,000 one, because I would question. It's a iPhone, the latest iPhone in the market. Why is it going for $500? I would question that. Even if you are doing like using the manufacturing industry, you buy, for example, baked beans. One can is going for $1, the other can is going for $2. I would ask, what is going on as a consumer? Because I'm also, as much as I'm a business person, I'm also a consumer. I want quality, the quality of the product that I'm taking in, that I'm going to consume. How has it been manufactured? Is it up to the standards that we want to live by? You will find that so many people, they buy products maybe because they cannot afford, or maybe because they want to cut corners, like he said, that look, you are getting something that is cheap because maybe you cannot afford, or you're getting something that is cheap because you think it's the best product, the other guy is expensive. But you cannot, it's not sustainable long term. It's either the product it hasn't been manufactured well, or if it has, there's some products that are missing in the products we're doing, that we have been given. So consumers must be considered. I think they value a lot in the chain, whether from the supply chain, manufacturing, up to the end. We are the consumers are the end users of whatever product, be it a service that you're providing, be it a product that you're providing, that you're giving away, be it doesn't matter what you're giving. So I think that we really should look at our consumers. Who are they? What are we giving back to the society as well as companies? Are we responsible enough? I like the discussion that you had about exploiting people. I could exploit as many youth as I can. Most of these youth, they love me. I deal with so many of them. I love the Catholic Church a lot. I'm not a Catholic myself, but I deal with lots of them. I get maybe even up to 20, 30, 40 a day that come into my inbox wanting to work with me. I could exploit them if I wanted. I could get them to do work for free for me if I wanted. But why would I do that? What do I benefit at the end of the day? They are also my customers. They are also my consumers. They consume the product that I give. So why should I do that? So I think as company owners or as business leaders, we should be very considerate when we're dealing with people. We should be considerate when we're dealing with consumers, because we don't know what they are going to do tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that answer, Zodwa. That's a really great answer. I mean, what a fantastic idea, right? If we have an awakened consumer who has some understanding of what the price points should be, And then if something comes and is really discounted to that price point, a consumer consciousness that says, no, I'm not going to pay 500 for this iPhone, probably was made with inappropriate labor practice. I would rather pay for the product that is at the appropriate price point where the value chain can be accounted for. I think that's a major anchoring point around our conversation collectively, however old we are, about our ability to be part of the solution space. However, having said that, I'll tell a bit of a funny story. The beauty of, again, social media is we're able to communicate very frequently with people who are at great distances from us. So I've got a WhatsApp group with my old classmates, and it turns into an ideological debate between right and left. And so some of us in that group are unbridled capitalists who would put even a recent president to shame. And then others are extreme left wing. And so it's a very healthy debate that goes on in the group. So let's take the side of my unbridled capitalist friends. Years ago, there was a movie, Wall Street, Michael Douglas, Gordon Gekko. Greed, for lack of a better word, is good. Greed is right. Greed works. Greed clarifies, cuts through, and captures the essence of the evolutionary spirit. There are many people in business who think like Gordon Gekko. There are many people in business whose end point as to did we do well is what the income statement and the balance sheet look like today, irrespective of what happened in the value chain. Not only that, some of these people can potentially be called viruses. So we'll come into one place, let's say it's in the minerals space, in the commodity space, and we will pillage there, pick a mineral, say chrome. And then after doing damage to that environment, we'll just get up and move on and go somewhere else to continue. And so then over a period of time, these unbridled right-wing capitalists have no concern for the sustainability of relationships that our esteemed panel is talking about, because they have optionality to go elsewhere and still deliver value. What do we say to that? What is our buttressing of the unbridled capitalists for whom greed, for lack of a better word, is good? Edmond, do you want to maybe take a shot?
Yeah, sure. So maybe just also to go back a little bit, what we are finding is that companies are being held more for their humanistic and economic performance. And really the question is it possible to create value for all stakeholders? Is it possible to leave everyone happy, customers, shareholders, investors, and so on? Can everyone be happy? I think it can still be achieved, in as much as what drives us is that aspect. And I like the term that you used, greed is good, because that's what drives us. That's what gives us an entrepreneurial spirit. But can business be conducted in a manner that is not deplorable? Because the situation that you just described of a mining company that comes, mines the resource and leaves, I would call it deplorable, you know. Businesses should ensure to find a win-win situation where the community, the shareholders, the customers, the suppliers, everyone is happy. And I think it's possible to achieve that win-win and leave no one disadvantaged. And I think increasingly stakeholders are holding companies to account a lot more than before. And I like the issue of the social media that you brought to the fore, and how there is consumer activism to ensure that at least there is no exploitation that leaves one stakeholder more disadvantaged than the others. And I think if you follow the local, for example, the local social media, there are milk companies that their product perhaps was not up to standard. They've been held to account. There are internet service providers whose service was not up to scratch. They've been held to account. And I think that way you help businesses develop and shape better. Thanks.
Great. No, thank you very much, Edmond. Any other comments to that, or can I move on to my next question?
Can I, Shingai, just
go for it.
Seeing that we're talking about profit and piety here, and I want to quote from St. Paul in his letter to the Ephesians, chapter 5, verse 5. And he says, "For this you can be sure, no immoral, impure, or greedy person, such a man is an idolater, has any inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and of God." So that adjective, greedy, can never be good. Ambition could be different, because you can have guided ambition. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And that's a very powerful delineation. Guided ambition versus greed. And let's hold that too. Now, in the earlier comments that were made, and Max, this was actually you who made this comment around the areas that are developing now. Two questions that I want to link from the questions coming from the panel. From the audience. There's a question that says, any thoughts on how our African culture of Ubuntu in a South African context, also leads us towards more ethical and godly ways of doing business? As a macro question. And then let's ask something very pointed within the form of that question. From Edmore, the question is, given the reality of our history that led to an informalized economy and ethics decadence, how can we cleanse our communities so that we can become more ethical in our operations? And I guess what I'm asking in merging these two questions is, if we are creating new ground in respect of where we're finding opportunity, but we're leaving the slums behind, where are our ethics there? Where is our Ubuntu there? And how do we reconcile the fact that the slums are in very bad shape, with the pressure from a shareholder to deliver return, if not annually, every quarter? How do we reconcile these two questions? Open to any of you to pick that up.
Okay, thanks. A lot of things can actually be learned. So there are very few institutions, very few places where ethical behavior can actually be learned. And this is what we need to promote in our institutions, in our corporate circles, to be able to groom, to make a conscious, a deliberate decision to educate people about the impact of conducting business in an ethical versus unethical manner. So these things cannot be learned, can be learned, but just to leave it and not attend to it will leave us in history where there has been exploitation, resources, people. So I think there's need to make a conscious effort to make sure that we all learn about how business can be done in an ethical manner.
Okay, so let me just push the point, right? Mbare Msika, right? Fascinating place, right? The number that I have, I don't know if it's correct, is $5 million a day of trade goes on around there. That is not clean. What would we do there to demonstrate this intersection that we're talking about of our ability to be the type of person that St. Paul would approve of, and the choice? There's dirty Mbare Msika over here, or I can take my business and go and set something up in Mount Hampton, which is clearly, quickly, very profitable. How would we drive business to the decision frame that would say, notwithstanding on my desk a fantastic opportunity for, say, a lovely hotel in Mount Hampton, Vic Falls, let's go and clean up Mbare, so that from a business point of view, we're bringing our Ubuntu to that environment. Thoughts?
Yeah, so my point, Shingai, is that there has to be a conscious effort. If I'm taking a truckload of potatoes or chibage or a truckload of cabbages to Mbare Msika, ultimately there would be a mess that's created that needs to be cleaned up. It's to make people conducting business in that location, in that area, aware of the impact that they are causing on the environment of Mbare Msika. That there would be rubbish that would be left uncollected. How can you, as a person conducting business in that area, contribute to the cleanliness of Mbare Msika? How do you make people who bring their produce for sale in Mbare Msika contribute to making sure that Mbare becomes an attractive place to go to, a smart place that anyone can go and do business? So that's the kind of education I'm referring to, the kind of advocacy that needs to come through and make people conscious of the impact that they cause when they operate in certain environments.
Okay, so this question is not really that abstract. It has a lot of history to it. So our great leader, who is very humble in this environment, Father Isaac Fernandez, I was also at school with him, so this is a bit of a reunion going on here. He spent some time at St. Peter's in Mbare and created cleanup programs in which he would bring people from within and without of Mbare to clean the place up. And what we saw was that no matter how rigorous the cleanup was, it would take 2 months for the place to be dirty again. Sorry, 2 weeks, 2 weeks for the place to be dirty again, which spoke to a much deeper issue, right? The broken spirit of a lot of people in that environment. Father Isaac put together a fantastic plan for the revitalization of Mbare. How could we completely reimagine it? Financials, use some of the organic waste for waste to energy to power things, buildings, and so on. Fantastic. Hasn't been done yet. My question, if the plan has actually been put in front of people with an investment return, why would we not have seen any attempt whatsoever to back that initiative? Perhaps the panel can guide us as to how do we revisit that and do it better, so that in 5 years, we can see a different Mbari. Thoughts?
If I may come in there, I think that we must appropriate responsibility to the right places. So businesses pay taxes, and taxes are supposed to be invested in resources that help people live well in the country.
Okay.
So when you look at the situation that you are painting, and I've been to Mbare Msika in the vegetable market, by the way, and it's clean in instances that you want to buy bulk stuff from there. So it is a clean place. However, I think there's a need to build culture where the responsible authorities must step up, either through taxing those people who are doing business, because doing business has got a cost. So the business people themselves who are selling a bag of potatoes, like Edmond is saying, every day, they must also feel responsible for the environment. So if they can't do it voluntarily, then the municipal authorities must come in with a framework which says that for you to be operating in this place, you stick to the standards, you contribute in this way. And I'm sure most people would contribute because everyone wants to live in a clean environment. Everyone aspires for something that is better. And I don't think that there's a hindrance to it. But if we are slack in our governance in that particular locality, then yes, we face what we're facing. And Father Isaac faces the same, if you want, resistance to a good plan as he faced. So are we able to step up and hold responsible those who are supposed to be governing that particular locality and making sure that it is an accessible locality? And in that way, you attract investment. No investor wants to go and invest in a chaotic place. You attract investment where there's order and there's a market opportunity. That's how I would say it.
Thank you very much for that, Max. So, tax gets paid, revenue is generated into the fiscus, and there's a responsibility for something to then happen from that. In South Africa, where I'm sitting, tomorrow's budget day, so this is a very topical consideration. However, the demands on the fiscus relative to the needs in the society is a prisoner's dilemma. There's just far too many things asking for that pocket, for that pot of money. Building on what you said, Max, in America in the 1950s, there was this idea that they had. Ray Kroc of McDonald's, Alfred P. Sloan of General Motors, and a couple of others, Standard Oil, Rockefeller. There was this idea that they had that there could be what is called a corporate statesman. So this is a person who intersects with the public sector to bring the strength of their balance sheet and their skills to work in tandem with the policy-making process. Because again, the demands on the fiscus far outweigh what is in the fiscus. And obviously everybody's trying to evade and avoid tax and all of those complicating factors as well. So can we start to ask ourselves on the African continent and globally even, where is the space again for the corporate statesman who works with the public sector to bring skills, also to bring the ability to raise capital? So governments struggle with things like raising bonds and accessing pension fund money and so on. But those skills are very vested in the private sector and in financial services. So is there not a space that potentially contemporary Africa is not really exploring that well? That says, yes, there's the payment of tax, but in addition to that, there is a collaboration between the public sector and the private sector to look at these very knotty and difficult problems, to try to solve them and still achieve an investment grade return. Any thoughts to that? Zodwa, do you think the public sector and the private sector can work together?
Yeah, I think they can work together, Shingai, if all things were equal. But what I see is the difference is the people that work in the private sector, they seem to think that, look, what we do in the private sector is maybe I should just concentrate on my industry that I'm in. When we try to engage the public sector, for example, I will use the example of Zimbabwe. We support our national airline a lot, and I think everyone who is in my sector would love to support the national airline. But when we try to engage the people in the public sector that, look, this is how things are supposed to be run, we give them ideas, fine, we don't have a decision to make. We can't make any decisions. We are guided by them, by the ministry and everyone else who is in the public sector as the private sector. So when you give them ideas, they're not taken. So as a result, you find that us as the private sector in our industry, we end up working alone with other foreign airlines instead of supporting our own national airline. Because whatever ideas that we give, whatever suggestion that we give, whether be it directly to the ministry or directly to the airline or directly like when we've got public gatherings, they never listen to us. So I seem to believe that in our sector, yes, we want to work with the public. Or maybe I should say maybe with the national airline, which is in the public sector. Us in the private industry, it then makes it so difficult for us to even make any contribution. As a result, we end up going other ways. We end up not doing anything. We end up not contributing. And they all end up thinking that we're sabotaging the national airline or we're sabotaging our own country as an industry, yet it's not the case. So I think that it is very important for us to maybe sit down with the public sector and the private sector, then we discuss before decisions are made so that we are able to work together. That's what I think.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Right, so we've got 5 minutes left. We did promise everybody on the panel that you'd be able to leave at 7:30 in respect of COVID curfew. We have so many questions, really fantastic questions that I'd love us to get into, but we just don't have the time. Perhaps if there is, as the expression goes, by popular demand, another opportunity to continue this conversation, because as I say, there's rich questions. There are very, very rich questions, very profound questions that are coming through that just don't have the time to get there. Let's now look to kind of sum up, and I'll try and distill the essence of the points that have come from the various speakers, so we can have some takeaways and then maybe think about what we do with them. So we're saying, number one, in Africa in general, in Zimbabwe in particular, currency is a real issue. The devaluation of African currencies for a variety of different reasons is a real issue. And their ability to be a store of value is a challenge, which creates an incentive around the need to have foreign currency, which is okay for export-oriented or internationally faced businesses, but has a real risk for businesses that only operate locally and are effectively trading in a continuously structurally depreciating currency. What do we do about that? Currency protection, currency holding value for our local currencies. Major point number one. Major point number two, consumer activism and digital technology is a major opportunity for us going forward. We have voice now, where before we were all silenced. There's the energy of a young person like Greta Thunberg. Let's have our African Greta Thunbergs come to the fore. And let's also put the same amount of attention on them. Because I know they're there. I'm working with some in this team. It's a fantastic team of young people. Let the voice of those young people, the energy that youthful idealism brings, come to be a conscience against where business practices are not consistent with our faith. Doing well by doing good is a possibility and is not just high-minded sentimentality. There are literal case studies where businesses have been shown to have been able to deliver value while solving real social problems. How do we generalize this to make this the way that business can work in general, and not just as isolated, fantastic examples? Regulation is important, particularly around source of money. Investment capital, you should be able to trace anti-money laundering and so forth, that money is clean. If you're somebody who's going to be managing money, understand what the source of that money is. Workers' rights, workers' compensation. Let's be fair in the value that is delivered across a value chain so that there is an equitable distribution of value across a particular value chain. Consumer service, consumer experience, consumer satisfaction. The first lever, and it's now coming out in the private equity space these days, that actually, if we deliver value to consumers and give a good consumer experience and give customers satisfaction, that's probably the best lever for what the private equity firm is going to do 5 years hence when it wants to, or 5, 7, 10 years hence when it wants to exit. So we're able to reconcile our faith and our business practice by properly serving the consumer. Let's not just be greedy. Let's be people that St. Paul would be proud of. Specifically on ESG, Bank of America said, ESG investing would have offered long-term equity investors benefits in mitigating price and earning risks, avoiding 90% of bankruptcies in 2002 to 2015. ESG attributes have been a better signal of future earnings volatility more than any other measure we've observed at a market level. That's a powerful point. That environmental, social, and governance considerations can have a straight line to investment returns and volatility of businesses. And so that must be a very deliberate business driver. And finally, how do we get the public and the private sector to work together to solve our toughest issues? To sum up, I want to say two things. My favorite American president, ironically, was Catholic, kind of how it worked out. John Fitzgerald Kennedy, in his inauguration, there's the famous saying that he had of, ask not what your country can do for you, ask rather what you can do for your country. I think he actually ended even stronger than that. He said, with a good conscience, our only sure reward, with history, the final judge of our deeds, let us go forth to lead the land we love, asking his help and his blessing, but knowing that on earth, God's work must truly be our own. Let me rephrase that as I sign off. Can we have the heroic leadership within ourselves that can drive a conscious capitalism that shows and liberates the heroic spirit of business, that seeks the fortune at the bottom of the pyramid, and in so doing, can we learn to lead for the kingdom? Thank you very much to all the panelists. You're absolutely outstanding. Thank you very much to our great quiet leader, Father Isaac, for coordinating all of this, and the many young people, led by Clive, who spoke at the very beginning, who have been an absolutely inspiring team to work with, that give someone like me the inspiration and the confidence that we can, in the final analysis, define a new business. We can reconcile our faith in action. Sunday can meet Monday. They don't need to be separated. Let us learn to lead for the kingdom. Thank you very much to everybody, and good night.
Cheers.